In 1999, a film starring Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne changed the landscape of big-budget action movies and helped bring BDSM one step closer to being your weird uncle's second favorite kink. It's The Matrix. This week... Wait. It just doesn't feel right. Guys, I'm sorry. I'll be right back. There's something I have to do. Hello, Matrix. Yeah. It's me. Listen, I hate to do this last minute, and I know we had plans today, but something's come up. I'm going to have to cancel. No, wait. Just let me finish. You need to hear this. You deserve the truth. You know, Matrix, when we first met, things were so fresh. They were so new. They were so exciting. You were really into all that leather, and I didn't even know that was a thing for me. But it was. But as time went on, things just got really confusing and kind of watered down. And at the beginning, you seemed so smart and so witty and so exciting, and so clever. But after all these years, listening to you go on, and I finally come to the realization that you're just really hollow, Matrix. Now, listen, we could go through the motions a few more times, but we both know that the magic is gone. But that's not all, Matrix. There's something else. Or rather, Matrix, there's someone else. I know this seems all so sudden to you, but I really need you to know that this has been going on a long time. I've known them all of my life, and I really started seeing them right around the same time I started seeing you. And while you stayed essentially the same all this time, over the years they've changed many times, for better or for worse. Sure, we've had our ups and downs, but Matrix, I at least feel like they're trying. And now Matrix, they've gone out on a limb. They took a huge risk for me, for us, and I can't abandon them now. Now that they're the most financially viable single superhero franchise of all time. You understand, right? Just remember, Matrix, it's not me. It's you. Now listen, don't cry. Don't cry. Hey, we'll always have that one Rage Against the Machine song, right? Goodbye, Matrix. All right, let's try that again. It's the ultimate nerd's fantasy. And guess what? It's made over $1 billion in under 2 weeks. So strap on some spandex and get ready to shoot a huge load of web all over your faces. It's Spiderman No Way Home. This week on Nothing Good.
What can anybody say to that?
Yeah.
Shit. I feel so bad for the Matrix right now. My heart aches for them.
Like
a little bit.
I've been in the Matrix's shoes before, you know, and like I feel like Noah, in a couple of days, the Matrix is going to show up on your front door with some flowers
and a boombox
in the rain,
or at least a boombox, and just like definitely in the rain, and you know, they're going to have a couple pills for you and see which one you want to take.
The red pill will make you take me back. The red pill, who knows?
I saw a great meme that, you know, because when movies don't quite land the way you hope they would, people turn to memeing them and gifing them and starting to make fun of them pretty quickly.
Yep.
And I saw one where somebody took the Matrix and basically turned it into a Seinfeld conversation where it's like, so he offered me the red pill and the blue pill, but no water.
No water?
No water. Like, how you can't take a pill with no water? You can't. So what'd you do? I left. Kramer shows up in black spandex. Like, I just thought it was really funny how that just kind of happened that quickly, right? So,
well, welcome to the show, everybody. And if you couldn't tell, we're not doing the fucking Matrix. We pulled a fast one on you. We're like your dad. And we have a second secret family that we're going to enjoy spending more time with. So,
yeah, we're doing things a little differently. This is a little bit of a departure from what we've pretty much been doing all this time with this show, as we cover things that are a little older, have, you know, a little bit of extra age on them, and we're able to talk about things we grew up enjoying. But this is a very different situation, and I blame you, Mr. Brown, for this. This was your idea, but it's a fantastic idea.
It was. You know, one can only put mature in the search bar so many times before you need to freshen it up, you know, and maybe go a little younger, just to change it up a little bit, you know.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that means exactly. But
listen,
let's talk about
we
Spider-Man.
support living your life in the incognito browser here on this show. Okay. But I'm very excited that in a way that not only are we talking about a movie that came out this year, but we're talking about a movie that just so recently came out, where it's so fresh because we didn't all just go back and watch it and have to spend 3 weeks trying to figure out what format or what streaming service it's on and plan our lives around it. We already did that accidentally. We can watch The Matrix anytime. We can call The Matrix up at 2:30 in the morning and be like, "What? You up? What are you doing? You got a man?" And then that's there. But this was a once in a lifetime.
I have, Noah.
I know you have, Mac. I know you have.
Sorry.
But we're here today to talk about, I mean, it's undoubtedly the biggest movie of 2021 and a huge release all the way across the board. Spider-Man No Way Home. So, but before we do, Dave's doing the web hand motions right now.
Little flip out there, everybody.
There, a little bit of that. How's everybody doing? How was everyone's holiday? Christmas is now coming past.
Pretty good.
It was solid. It was relaxing, which was nice.
Mac, how you doing?
My holiday was just bullshit. So ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I will. You may know a little bit of sexiness to my voice here, a little bit deeper, a little bit more raspy this time around. And ladies and gentlemen, that's because as of the moment, I am currently getting over COVID. The Transformer variant found its way into my home and, star screamed me into submission. Right. Actually, on Christmas Eve, everybody, I ended up testing positive for COVID. Ended up getting it from a friend, by no fault of anybody's. Everybody was vaccinated. Everybody was wearing masks. But it just goes to show you that, as Jeff Goldblum has said in his immortal words from Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
That's right.
So, unfortunately, my holiday has been spent quarantining, which is also ironic because it was my first day off of 13 days off of work. And I started noticing myself feeling achy, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But
vacation.
COVID vacation. I was like, why couldn't this have happened for New Year's instead of Christmas? Because then I could have had another 10 days off of work. But but no, unfortunately, COVID fortunately only hit me. It did not hit Stephanie. It did not hit anybody in my family. Did not spread it inadvertently to any friends or coworkers. So very fortunate, all things considered. It wasn't terribly major either. Not experiencing a lot of the health issues that so many people have had. Very fortunate about that. I do attribute that to having taken some of the proper precautions. Everybody's certainly welcome to mask, don't mask, vaccine, don't vaccine. Everybody's free to kind of live their lives the way they choose. But I do believe that me having the vaccine caused or prevented some major issues from happening. So very fortunate about that, because I felt this virus want to. It went from 0 to 60 in about 2.5 seconds and said, all right, let's go. And I kind of felt my body said, hold the phone, you motherfucker. We're call in the reserves. We're ready to roll. So fortunately, doing okay, still feeling a little bit, but you won't be hearing me drinking any beverages today, everybody. It's pretty much just Gatorade and water. Hear the little raspiness in the voice, just me and getting over the Rona. So,
but we do
I
like
kind of dig the raspiness, if I can be honest with you.
Your sexy new voice. It's very soothing. It looks good on you. This
will be hopefully my only reminder, this podcast recording, of my time with coronavirus. Because if there's ever a time, ladies and gentlemen, to lose your sense of smell and taste, the worst time to do so is during Christmas, when you have all the snacks, you have all the foods. We were very fortunate that a lot of family and friends took care of us, brought us food and everything we needed while we were kind of stuck in quarantine and lockdown. So, not being able to taste cookies or cakes or stuff like that you get for the holidays is certainly bizarre. But if that's the worst thing that happens to me this holiday season, I'm still truly blessed. So,
well, on behalf of everyone here in the show and all of our Peruvian delegation listeners, we're very glad you're okay. We're all worried about you, but in the same respect too, we're glad. Listen, and I'm just going to be the one to say it here. I know nobody else wants to, but I'm going to make two references. One's a joke, one's a not. One, you said life finds a way, and from personal experience, a lot of things can find their way into your body, Dave. And you can struggle as much as you want to, but it's going to happen. And so you might as well just stay at home for a few days and rest up. And number two is, listen, I don't agree with what Max said. Fucking take care of yourself. Take care of everybody around you and do whatever you can to keep you and others safe. If you're one of the assholes that listens to this and doesn't do what you can to protect you, your family, and everybody else, I have one thing to say to you. Fuck you. Okay? And that's
there it is.
There it is. Okay? That's
Agreed.
what you said.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's my general stance on everything. But we've got some good friends who, have not chosen to get vaccinated, have not chosen to mask up when they go and do things, and the way that I've kind of looked at it in this world is I can take care of me, and I can take care of the people immediately around me, and that's really where I kind of put my focus, because that's what I can control. And there's just a lot of divisiveness out there in the world, and unfortunately, I think we can all agree this issue has become far too politicized when it's for the common good and for common health. But alas, it was, and it has been, and it still is. So, my recommendation, obviously, for everybody is to, as Noah said, fucking take care of the people around you. Do the things that you can do to prevent the spread of this thing, so we can all fucking get past it. I'd love to just kind of go back to the way things kind of were, and if we don't do enough, we're not going to get there. So the ironic thing, everybody, is that I was going to be getting my booster the week I was off of work, and of course this kind of happened to hit before that happened. So it is what it is. But yeah, like Noah said, everybody, definitely take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you, so that those that can't take care of themselves don't have to worry about your ass. So
that's right.
And that's the official nothing good PSA.
Yes.
Take care of yourselves.
The more you know.
We know it's divisive, but you know what hasn't been divisive? Fucking Spider-Man No Way Home. Is there a single person that can get their ass to a movie theater that, despite a pandemic, didn't say, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to the movies? Because
it was happening.
It is currently happening right now.
I think this officially puts Spider-Man at the top of the pyramid. Like, of all the comic book characters, of all the superhero, no standalone movie has accomplished what this motherfucker did a couple weekends ago, with the second highest opening weekend ever. Behind, of course, only Avengers Endgame, which included every fucking superhero.
Including Spider-Man.
Including Spider-Man. This one was just Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man. And Spider-Man.
So, okay, we should. I should have put this in the beginning. But if you are listening to this show and haven't fucking seen Spider-Man yet, first of all, what the fuck are you doing?
Don't listen to that shit.
Shame on you,
right?
Don't listen to
that. This is going to be so spoiler laden that it's not. We're not going to step you through the movie, but it's going to be a whole thing, and you are an asshole for not seeing the movie or listening to a podcast talk about this before you've seen it. What the hell are you doing? You know what? You make terrible choices, and you should be fucking ashamed of yourself. This is probably low on the list, but yes. Anyway, that's the long version of saying spoiler alert, people. It's funny. We did spoiler alert about movies 30 years ago that we were more intense with yelling spoiler alert. So, doing my very precursory research right now, there's only, as of right now at this moment, and it'll probably change in about a week, there's only one standalone superhero movie that has made more money than Spider-Man No Way Home that isn't Spider-Man, and that's Black Panther. It has made about $300 million more, which will probably change in the next week or two. And allow Spider-Man to crack that elusive top 10. But speaking of cracking, Dave, I know you mentioned that you're having Gatorade and water right now, but as is a nothing good tradition, what is everyone drinking?
I'm going to get this out of the way now. I'm drinking water because it's the middle of the day and I have driving to do later on.
This is the earliest.
All I have is I have liquor, so I'm all about driving around buzzed out of my ass. So
it's weird seeing daylight while we're doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a little different, but it works. I was traveling for the holidays. I'm still not back home in Pittsburgh. I'm in Eastern PA at my in-laws, which is, you hear about guys in their 40s recording podcasts from their parents' basements. That's literally me right now. As you can see, there's no Lord of the Rings sword and Star Wars toys behind me. I'm just in an old basement. But since I'm in Eastern PA, I'm drinking a sour IPA from Iron Hill Brewery, which is a chain brewery out here from Eastern PA. Dave's been there a number of times.
It is my favorite microbrew, man. It is my favorite brewery. I love that place. Jeff, if I could put it, well, I can't taste anything, so. but if I bring it back, but you can't taste it. So. Yeah, I was gonna say if you could bring me back some of the raspberry wheat, whatever its current name is right now, I always appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm day drinking. So cheers.
Attaboy.
Beautiful. And I want to say, though our audio listeners can't see, you're in a basement with wood paneling, plaid cushions on that couch, and some lace frill work on the curtains behind you. Look, you are literally recording this podcast in 1979, and I respect the
No, he's an Amish country. He's an Amish country, man. That's how it comes there.
Oh, yes. I am also day drinking with a special concoction that I make for when I'm off in multiple days. Now, this drink is called the NAFTA. For any of our socio-politically uneducated people, stands for the North American Free Trade Agreement. What it is an iced Americano. An Americano is espresso in hot water, or ice water in this case, with tequila in it. So it's a little American, a little Mexican. It's the NAFTA. It gets you going and also gets you going.
That sounds a hell of a combination.
Well, listen, I mean, the fact that we got tequila in the conversation, hopefully we can use that to maybe get some of our Latin American viewers and listeners into the fold here. Peru, you know, we're looking at you, Peru. But why don't you get some of your friends over here too? You know, there's we got 4 of us over here and just one of you. Why don't you go ahead and check on some of those neighbors, rattle on those doors, and you know, send some of that nice Latin American ass our way.
That would be so wonderful.
It's not a bad way.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
But let's get down into it. And I'm going to ask the important question here, gents. Was this movie not fucking awesome?
It was so good. And what's interesting is there, in the recent years, there hasn't been a movie with so much hype and so much fan expectation going into it as this movie had, and they fucking delivered on every level. It was such a love letter to fans and kids and adults who act like kids and everyone. I mean, this movie is for everyone. It
was incredible. It was. Yeah. They did. There's fan service, and then there's like lacing your film with all kinds of references so that the diehards get it, and then there's whatever the fuck this movie did. Like, this movie went so deep and so hard that they even did the pointing Spider-Man meme in the middle of the movie just to give that to the movie. And they fucking did it for us. Oh, but yeah, dude, like, this movie went through the whole gambit of emotions. It geeked you out. It got you excited. It made you cry. It went through the whole thing, and it did exactly what you want a movie of this magnitude to do. It left you wanting more at the end, and it sets you up to see where everything goes going forward. It's like, how do you not?
I can't believe that they were able to accomplish as much as they did in this movie, playing off of everything that came before it, giving you an unbelievably exciting, entertaining, emotional journey. And then how they left it off, which I got some very strong feelings about, like some really strong feelings about, and how they took things that you knew you wanted, you didn't know you wanted, you can't believe they did it that way, and still making you feel like you had such an unbelievably satisfying experience in a story. Whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC, whether it's, you know, Disney Studios, Marvel, Sony, whomever making this, I can't think of a movie, with maybe the exception of 1 or 2, that told a complete story, that carried an emotional gravitas, that really, to me, felt like a very much a cinematic experience, right? I think is really what I'm going at here. This isn't your cookie cutter popcorn version of these films. There is a lot to chew on with this movie, and I give it a lot of credit. I think outside of Black Panther, which I think we can all agree is one of the few of these movies, this Dark Knight probably, that gives you things to chew on about society, about you know, of course, Black Panther, about race. You know, this movie lends about it's an introspective journey that Peter goes on, that Peter's always gone on, but we never got it. Like, it was almost like the Spider-Man origin story being told in its 3rd fucking movie. It's so many things to unpack about this movie.
It's incredible. I think we should flat out start off here by acknowledging the outright anxiety the movie makes you feel in the starting sequence of picking up literally right where No Way Far From Home leaves off. You're like, oh, where are they going to jump in out? Oh, just literally right there at that exact moment in time. You can take that shit with you. And man, it just feels so claustrophobic when you're in that apartment with May and Jon Favreau and all of that other stuff. And the movie really never stops. And when it does, it betrays you, which I love when movies do. They're like, okay, take a breath, and guess what? You fucking asshole. Why are you sitting down? Get up, because something else is going to happen right now.
it played so well, Noah, creating that feeling of urgency, and like you said, the world coming crashing in around him.
Mhm.
You know, for anybody who you know is familiar with Spider-Man, he's one of the superheroes who so closely guards his identity, because like with Peter Parker and Spider-Man, with his villains, it is so fucking personal.
Mhm.
It is always personal. And like, we're not going to attack Spider-Man. You know, we're going to fucking attack who you love, who you care about. We're going to torture you and haunt you and just, and, you know, when Peter Parker's identity is revealed in today's day and age, right? You know, we're not talking about 50 years ago in the comic books, before the internet, before cell phones, before everybody had cameras. And now you throw that element of today's society into that thought process, where people immediately make up their mind about you because of a fucking video they see on TikTok.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's true or not. Doesn't matter if you did any research. You know, a thing I laugh all about today is when you see people post videos, look at this UFO in the sky that nobody's talking to you about. And I watch these things like, I can probably create that video in about 10 minutes on my computer and put that online as well. But you know, there are people that believe it. And they give you that sense of feeling right away when he jumps down to go grab MJ, because people start to swarm her. You start to hear some of that vitriol towards Peter for those people who believed in Mysterio. And you killed him, you know, and we should get him. You know, they start to really kind of do that. And it creates this great tension at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. And you hear that girl yell, "Oh, Spider-Man hit me. He hit me."
Yeah.
They're like, everybody just turns on him instantly, because they're like, they've all fed into, and like J.K. Simmons plays J. Jonah Jameson as like this extremist propaganda guy.
Alex Jones,
who's just feeding the masses with whatever his bullshit is. And everybody's just eating out of his hand when he reveals Parker's identity as Spider-Man.
Well, and it's great too, because when they do that quick pull away, once he's done with that broadcast, you see he's shooting it on a green screen in the
he's just in an apartment, or whatever.
Like wherever he is, right? Yeah. It's not the J. Jonah Jameson who's in charge of the Daily Bugle.
No, but when you cut later in the movie,
newspaper,
he made so much money off of the Spider-Man malarkey that he's got a full-on big proper green screen studio. Yep. I think the idea that you basically made the Daily Bugle into InfoWars was fucking genius. Like, oh my God. Because it absolutely good. Because how can a newspaper fit in an era where nobody reads a newspaper?
It doesn't have influence in today's day and age.
But that shit does. Yeah, that shit does. Oh,
and they hit the note perfectly. They played the chord so perfectly to let that fit today, you know? And even when you go back to some of the older movies where, you know, when Tony Stark in Civil War, when he finds Peter because he's posting videos of Spider-Man on YouTube, right? Because, you know, Peter Parker always made his living taking pictures of Spider-Man and selling them to the newspapers as a freelance photographer. Well, again, without newspapers in today's day and age, how do you do that? You don't. You put videos on YouTube. You make TikToks. You have influencers, right? And it's such a great, and it seems like it's an easy transition, but as a Spider-Man fan, you have to accept that we're not going to go down that traditional Peter Parker road, and everybody does.
I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's going to be such a genius thing to eventually see Spider-Man selling videos of himself to the Daily Bugle to air as the way to make his rent and to have to balance that horse shit again. Listen, I'm just going to, we could just fanboy all over this, and we're going to. People, don't get us wrong. But I think it'd be cooler and a little bit interesting if we just take key moments like this, like we just did with Daily Bugle in the intro, and we just kind of fluff ourselves up real hard about it and go through each one and kind of throw to each of us to kind of lead this thing. And the first thing I want to do is throw to you, Doc. And I want to get your opinions on how they absolutely fit Doctor Strange into a Spider-Man movie the way they did. And also, if you want to mention the reveal that Wong is now Sorcerer Supreme.
Which I guess makes total sense. I mean, Strange was gone for a long time. So I guess things have to move on, and it fits Wong's personality perfectly.
Mhm.
Like that responsibility that he really just doesn't want. He can do shits less, but he has to do it. But as far as, including Doctor Strange, now, this is not the first time in Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man's identity has been erased from all of the minds of the people in the world. I just don't believe that Doctor Strange had to do with each time. I think it's been done 2 times at least.
Mephisto.
I could be wrong. Was it Mephisto?
Mephisto was the Brand New Day.
More. Was it Brand New Day or One More? I think it was Brand New Day or One More Day.
Brand New Day was the series, and then One More Day.
One More Day was the comic.
Was the last little add-on to it, kind of tie it into the relaunch.
So, I mean, obviously, from planning the MCU standpoint, Doctor Strange has to be a part of something that's including the multiverse, because we get the multiverse of madness. And there's like a whole conversation about how with these villains and them being fixed or cured, and going back into now a different timeline, because they're not going back into the timelines that we watched, because that's just not how that works, because the TVA doesn't exist anymore. So that's just going to keep going. Thank you, Loki, for that. Right? There's so many things happening with this, and that will just continue to happen now.
Until
it's so fucking cool.
Until it doesn't, right? Until Kang ends up.
I don't know.
Lord of all time.
Jonathan Majors is cast as Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man Quantumania. So, his ass is gonna show up at some point in time there. At some point in time.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Literally.
Literally. And just,
but I love the.
Go ahead, Jones. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I was just gonna close out. I mean, I really love the inclusion of Doctor Strange, because even though his standalone film was good, Doctor Strange easily gets like kind of a backseat kind of persona in a lot of movies, considering he's one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. But his powers are always very understated. Like, he does a little bit here, does a little bit there. But in this movie, we really got to see like some good character development. I really enjoyed the fact that you got to see like a change from him kind of being annoyed with Peter Parker to him more or less admitting that he has so strong emotion for this kid at the end of the movie. You got to see like that change and how realistically Doctor Strange could have put the kibosh on this very early, because he cares for Peter, because he sees good in him, and then that he deserves good things, that he wanted to help him, ended up kind of fucking the universe, or all the universes. But I really enjoyed, Benedict does an excellent job as Doctor Strange. And I'm just excited to see where he goes further with his character and all the rest of the movies.
One of the things that I particularly enjoy about Doctor Strange being positioned in this is that in this trilogy of films, Peter Parker in each movie was given a mentor, which if you kind of go into the Ultimate Comics and you see some of the recent cartoons, Peter Parker was never really left to figure it out on his own. He is basically anointed to be, an Avenger or a young Avenger or a new group to lead, because everybody kind of recognizes the skills. But, we're in a world where Cap and Iron Man and Hulk and Thor are doing their thing, right? And where does this kid from Queens really fit in? So you position him in the first movie with Robert Downey Jr., and you really establish the strength of that relationship. And then in the second movie, with RDJ and Tony Stark removed, you put him in with Nick fucking Fury, the head of all of it, right? And now in this movie, Nick Fury is off-world. He's been off-world for an entire year. So now you put him with the fucking, once and future Sorcerer Supreme. And, these are all strong characters that that leave impacts and imprints on Peter Parker's character, because he's still not even college age. So what does this line of influences mean for the future of the MCU and the future of Peter Parker? Because I think that with these 3 movies, they're laying the framework that Peter is going to end up being the next Tony Stark, the next, T'Challa, that he's going to be the one that's going to hold the whole thing together. And And it's a great way to put Doctor Strange in and have him do that as well.
Yeah, I know. What to me interesting, first of all, how could you not, especially now, from a movie studio standpoint, see the financial success of this movie and not go, oh, there we go. There's a big old chunk of glue that we were pretty sure was there, but now it's definitely your central building block. And after watching the movie, driving home with the wife, we had a conversation about this, and it was interesting that at the end of the film, when you see Strange talk about how the people that love you and that care about you will no longer, basically telling Peter this fate that is in a lot of ways worse than death, and telling Peter that he cares about him. And like the conversation, the discourse, because the MCU is so layered, and it's so satisfying when you're all caught up and you see the little throws they make to the tiny things that you only know because you're a human with a brain and you have a memory and you understand all this stuff. But the fact that you got to go back to Infinity War, man, and Endgame, and that Strange looked at all the possible realities and when the instances that would lead to this moment in time of Thanos being defeated, and he saw that only one way would work, and it was that Tony Stark would have to invent time travel in order to come back and save the stones and save the human race and sacrifice himself. And the whole reason he does it is to save Peter Parker. Like, that's his primary motivation. So here's this kid that that nobody will remember, including the people that cared for Tony, would not remember that the one guy that was the motivation to make Tony save the entirety of existence. It's like one of those extra layers. He's like, you know what you're giving up, but that's again too. That's why he's Peter Parker, right? He did all of that, and Strange was the great instigator for that plot point, but they could have. It was a genius fit. It's a genius fit because you could have gone through 1,000 ways and a pseudoscience way to have a hole get tore open in society or anything. But no, they just went, hey, listen, it's fucking magic. We're telling you this in the previews. Get used to it. Worry about other shit for 2.5 hours. So good. But all right, Jafar.
Yeah.
So Doctor Strange is the reason, and that spell is the reason why, reality tears open and some of the wonderful villains of Spiders past and present come flooding through. And the very first of which we see is the return of Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I mean, that's pretty badass, right?
Yeah. I think, the returning villains did such a phenomenal job in this film. And like Dave said earlier, like for them, everything is very personal against Peter. Like, and even if you look at, Spider-Man in general, like if you talk about all of his mentors over time, the public eye, they don't know that. They don't know he's a kid. But when he's vulnerable, when he's not Spider-Man, you're like, oh yeah, he's just a kid. He's in high school. Like he's still figuring out life in general. Can he even drive? I don't know. But to see the villains come back and, for us as fans of Spider-Man, and I've been a lifelong fan of Spider-Man. He's one of my favorite superheroes of all time. Mm-hmm. And so to see them come back from the old films, which I was also a big fan of, but slightly different. They're more mature. They're more modern. They're a little more sinister, but at the same time relatable. And I think that's what was the big draw, was that these guys are all assholes and, Peter's trying to fix them, but there's a level of emotion that's tied to each of those characters that it's like, okay, I see what he's going through and I can kind of relate to that. Maybe bad guys aren't all that bad until they're bad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But when, so the way that they were hyping it with all the trailers and everything going in, like we knew Doc Ock was there. We knew Goblin was coming. We knew Sandman was there. Electro was there. Lizard was there. But like, we weren't sure how they were going to get there. Like we knew they came through the portals when the spell goes awry. But when they put Doc Ock on that bridge and the action immediately picked up, and it didn't stop from that point forward as they slowly started introducing all the rest of the villains. And what I loved was that it was just like, all right, these guys are here. Let's do this,
Yeah, that's one of the things that we don't often get with MCU movies is that, one of the great things they did with the first Avengers was they used Loki as the villain. So that when Loki shows up, assuming you've been on this ride with them for a while, he hits the ground running, the movie hits the ground running. You don't have to worry about a first act establishing the villain, maybe turning the villain into the villain or giving them his or her superpowers. You don't have to worry about that. And like you said, Jeff, because we, theoretically everybody knows who these characters are already, because again, it's the same people playing them.
Yeah.
We can just hit the ground running.
Yeah. And I think, the performances that those guys gave, Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe in particular, just out of the park. Like they killed their roles. It was so good.
No, yeah. First of all, I believe that statistically, any movie with Jamie Foxx in it is cooler than any movie without Jamie Foxx in it. I mean, that's just how it is. And
it's a shame he wasn't in Bad Boys 2.
It's just listen.
Oh,
maybe he was, and we just don't know it, and that's why it's so much of an enjoyable film, much more than Doc gives it credit for. But you know what we're gonna do? Yeah. We're gonna do Bad Boys 2 the musical one of these episodes. We're just gonna perform it about Doc's secret love affair. That whenever he quits recording these episodes, he puts down his phone and he goes into his bedroom and he pulls down the blinds and locks the door and he opens up his closet and there he's got a bubblegum sculpture like Hey Arnold made of the cover of the DVD of Bad Boys 2. And then he just professes his love to it. But to me, going into this movie, the two weakest origin stories of all the Spider-Man villains that we've gotten in previous films were, in no disrespect to the actors, were Electro and Sandman, and I think and they immediately rectified that with Jamie Foxx. Like about 30 seconds into him being in the movie, you're like, oh shit, there it is.
And I think part of it was because they let Jamie Foxx be Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
As opposed to, the version of Electro that we got in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Completely different guy, completely different personality, obviously a completely different look than we got in this movie. And it was a good change.
Yes.
And give Marvel credit here for retconning some of this stuff. Number one, the version of Electro we got was not the version of Electro I think anybody really wanted. I think that's the version of Electro from Ultimate Spider-Man, which is kind of what the Andrew Garfield comic movies were kind of going along that line.
Yep.
And then they made him more in this one because in this reality, the power was different. That it transitions him more towards the Electro, that classic Electro with the yellow suit and the star. And I loved how they did that. But fucking props. One of the things about this movie that I loved, and you guys mentioned especially the performance of Willem Dafoe, who, I'll get into that later. One of the huge complaints from the very first Spider-Man movie, and Noah, I know your love of Willem Dafoe, right? It's a deep love, everybody. You don't cast Willem Dafoe in a role and then put a mask over his face for the whole movie, right? And that's basically what we do in the first Spider-Man movie by giving him that rigid goblin mask. But what do they do in the first, 5 minutes of this movie? Break the fucking mask.
Yep.
So that the rest of the performance that we get is just 100% Willem Dafoe. And I think that made such a huge difference.
Yeah, what I really liked about that moment of him breaking the mask is they showed the mask being broken in the footage released up to the movie. And they were just getting everyone, myself included, to think, okay, his mask gets broken in battle. But that's not the case at all. That's Willem Dafoe. He's having this sort of internal struggle about who's in control, him or the Goblin. Breaking the mask is sort of symbolic of that, of him sort of breaking that bond, even though, as we all know how it turns out, the Goblin was in control the whole time. But I thought that sort of juxtaposition of him being the one to break the mask so that you could see him for who he is, I thought that was a pretty slick move.
Oh, it's super clever. And just to kind of keep going with what we're saying is that they took the ability to not just kind of smooth out the edges of these villains for the MCU now that they're in this massively successful franchise that they're in. But I mean, really, the difference between what we know about how to make superhero movies from when the first Spider-Man came out to now, and all the properties, it's just huge, and it's grown. And the first Spider-Man, you get the idea that, oh, here's a greedy scientist who gives himself a secret serum, and now he's an evil person, and that was enough to suffice in the year 2000 for a movie, and like that's all the motivation you need. Evil serum, bad guy, good guy has to stop him. But in 2021, with all of the 5 million Marvel properties that have come out since then, and all getting better and better and better at the subtlety, they needed fresh motivation. They needed to smooth out. And what I love about what they did with Dafoe in this movie is they're like, we're not going to change his personality from the original one. We're just going to explain why it is the way it is. And the answer was, oh shit, mental health. I'm like, oh, they didn't put a label on it, but now it's like, oh, this serum gave him super strength, super resilience, and it also made him a schizophrenic. And there it is. And the schizophrenic side is a fucking psychopath. But the other side is there's a legit person inside of there the whole time that you can't predict when he's coming out or when he's
lost complete control.
Yeah, and that's there it is. And I think, and to kind of flip there, the only character that they didn't really give that kind of a smoothing out to was the Sandman in a lot of ways in this movie, because frankly, and I mean this with as much respect as I possibly can muster it, but I mean, fuck the Sandman in a lot of ways. You got a movie where you have knowing eventually that all the Spider-Mans are coming out. You've got you got Matt Murdock coming back. You've got J. Jonah Jameson in here. You've got Aunt May just looking super awesome the whole time. You got Jon Favreau, all these other things going on. Do you really? And then all the other villains are coming back. You don't really need to do anything different to the Sandman, other than just immediately remind everybody that at the end of Spider-Man 3, before he died, he turned babyface, right? And so,
right,
yeah,
and that's
he's still looking out for Parker.
Oh, he didn't die. He just flew away.
Yeah, just
flew away
in a puff of smoke.
Yeah,
that was almost out of The Mummy Returns, right?
Yeah,
and one of the several things that they kind of tripped on with that third Spider-Man movie. They didn't have to. I kind of thought it was weird that they left him in sand form for most of the movie. I thought they would want to save a few bucks on the effects and just let Thomas Hayden Church wear the shirt for a little while, but and you mentioned it here too, Noah, and I want to say this before we really get into more of the movie. We're just going to casually bring fucking Daredevil into this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I marked when I saw Charlie Cox walk in there, right? I mean, just you're hoping for it. It was always rumored, right? I don't know how they went ahead and somebody leaked that one, but they did a really nice job of really avoiding it. And then, we just see the red glasses and we see the cane in the foreground. Yeah, and you just know the devil of Hell's Kitchen is Peter's fucking legal counsel. And they didn't have to do it because you're already setting up She-Hulk. So you can already bring her in to represent Peter if you needed to. But you bring in Daredevil for a reason. And I loved that they did that, and I love that they kept it with Charlie Cox. He did such a great job of the Netflix shows, and deserves to maintain the mantle of that character. And I can't wait to see where he's going to show up again next. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and now spoiler alert: we have Daredevil and Kingpin in the MCU.
Yep,
right. The Hawkeye.
Yeah, played by the same fucking actors that played him so well on the Netflix shows.
It's excellent. And I love that little subtle hint when he's like, Peter, you're going to be, your legal troubles are going to go away, but Happy, you're going to need a real good lawyer because they're looking for that missing Stark tech. And then because we know what we know, and they didn't show it. They didn't make this movie about Daredevil, but he's here in Happy's heartbeat immediately jumped to 1,000 whenever they mentioned the missing Stark tech. He's like, yeah, you're going to need a real good lawyer, like a real good one.
Well, and don't forget that Jon Favreau played in the Daredevil movie Foggy.
Yeah.
Matt Murdock's partner. in a multiverse. I thought that would have been funny if they ended up having Jon Favreau facing off against Jon Favreau in a multiversal movie. We might still get it, but
he can do whatever he wants now.
He can do whatever he wants now.
But I think there's a lot to be said. I think the only character that it got smoothed over, but the only one you really didn't need to change, and they didn't do it too much, was Molina and Doc Ock in this regard, because it's Alfred Molina, right? I mean, he's an actor's actor, and having him be sort of he's the pulse in a lot of ways of the villains in that movie. He starts off, he's maniacal, Chip is fried as rain, Doc Ock, but he's the first one that's cured, and so you see that switch in that potential. In that character and genius. And I think we could all, we're trying not to give too much love to anything but this movie right now, because we're all Spider-Man fans here. But I think before the Marvel, the MCU version of Spider-Man, I think we could all universally agree that probably, if not the best, the most universally enjoyed Spider-Man movie was Spider-Man 2, right? Yeah. With Tobey and Doc Ock, right? Yep. And that was the one that kind of, any of your problems with the way they portrayed Defoe in the first movie and the cartoon nature, they fixed it. You have the most iconic scene in the Tobey Maguire series with the train in Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock, strong villain, strong resource, strong everything, right? And then to take that exact thing and realize, okay, almost acknowledging like we didn't really do anything too wrong in that movie, so let's just keep that going and then build all of the other stuff on there. It was just so much of this movie was a love letter to all things Spider-Man that came before this. And I think having Molina be the first one you see and ultimately prove to be a babyface at the end of the movie was just really, 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 really cool.
Well, and we get Spider-Man actually fighting in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot.
In the first Spider-Man movie against Vulture, they really don't go hand to hand, right? No. He really doesn't go hand-to-hand combat on Mysterio. But, I mean, you really get to see Peter.
So small.
Yeah, you really get to see Peter in action in this movie. And, man, the action pieces are phenomenal in this movie. That whole bridge sequence, like, I got chills when I was watching it. I remember I was sitting next to Steph in the theater. I remember grabbing her arm and just like, this is fucking awesome. Because even the clip they show you for the trailer and on the TV ads don't do that sequence justice. They really bring it in that, and that action carries as we get to the other characters in the movie too, when they really get to start fighting.
Well, just not to hop on you here, but I mean, what was cool though is here's Doc Ock shows up, and before that sequence, so many of the sequences that we've seen Tom Holland deal with in a lot of these things, right? In the last couple of movies with the Avengers movies and Far From Home are these big, huge action set pieces. He's fighting aliens. He's in outer space. There's drones and all of this stuff. And what that was just Spider-Man trying to stop a car falling off a bridge while fighting a villain. And it still was fucking exciting. And it wasn't out of place. And so it was like, oh yeah, we're going to scale it back a little bit with some of these sequences, and it was cool.
There's a lot of grandeur there's a lot of good stuff that Marvel does that gets lost in the grandeur of their storytelling sometimes. And I think you kind of saw that with Black Widow. I think you saw that with the third act of Shang-Chi. When you have Endgame where half the universe is at stake and you have two armies going against each other, you can't keep telling that same fight scene time and time again, right? I think my favorite fight scenes in the Marvel movies were Captain America and the Winter Soldier, when they had that knife fight on the streets, where it's practical. They choreographed it. Shang-Chi, the bus sequence, even though there's a lot of digital elements, he's still fighting. There's still that hand-to-hand combat. Even with how big this movie is, it feels like an intimate movie with these characters. They don't let the scope of what they're trying to accomplish overtake the movie.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you can't talk about the scope and what the movie attempted to accomplish without first saying that one of our grand instigators to this movie sequence is, listen, one of the hallmarks of this series, as opposed to its other iterations, was that we got no Uncle Ben. in this MCU. And Aunt May was way different. She went from being a little old lady baking a pie to being Sally Field, being just so fucking mean to Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire that I'll never forgive her no matter what movie she's in. Fucking douche. Even if Martin Sheen is her husband, which makes it tolerable to a certain extent. But they made movies ago in Captain America Civil War. They made the super decision to cast Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, making her both super accessible and being real, super fuckable at the exact same time too. And then here we are, all these movies and all the iterations of it to pay off the way it did in this movie. Only for her last lines to hit us with that line. Jones, how'd you feel about the Aunt May thing, dude? Like what went through your mind?
So I'm glad that I'm not the only person who picked up on it. Mackie said earlier about how, this movie was like an origin story, and I agree totally. This entire trilogy of movies was the origin story of our Peter Parker, our Spider-Man, right? Because before that, he wasn't our Spider-Man, he wasn't our Peter Parker yet, right? Everything was handed to him, so on and so forth. But all of Peter Parker is tragedy, right? All of it is sacrifice. Yeah. All of it is loss. Spider-Man isn't Spider-Man until he loses and learns to lose and learns what it means to lose, and in spite of it, to still fight and still do the right thing. And as far as the scene with Aunt May, did not expect that line. Did not expect that line. And when she dropped it, I just was like, the sawdust in the theater, I don't know, cutting onions, I don't know what it was, but I fucking felt that shit. I was like, and I just I turned to my wife, and she's got the tears going down, like, God damn it. And she doesn't even really truly appreciate the gravity of that fucking line. That's how I know it was a good scene, right?
Marielle
it was just so well done. It was so well done. And it was
of the 3 Spider-Man origin movies, that line being read in each iteration of Spider-Man, this was the first time they did it verbatim to the comic, because there's one extra word thrown in there. But it was so emotional because you could feel the pain of Peter in that moment. Like, he was completely broken. He was completely vulnerable. And even as he was getting shot at by the guys outside, like, he was still just so wrapped up in emotion, because that's such a critical breaking point for Spider-Man as a character in any iteration. And it was pretty emotional for everybody. I mean, I don't think there was a dry eye in theater either viewing that I saw the movie. When that happened. They
so fucking smart of, this creative team. I don't want to. Kevin Feige's been a part of Spider-Man since the first Spider-Man movie. He was an associate producer on the original Spider-Man. Amy Pascal has also been a big part of this. Avi Arad has been a big part of this. Obviously, the cinematic journey of Spider-Man through these years. They've all really been a part of it. I don't want to sit there and give credit to any one person over another, because I don't know who made the decision to do this. But it was a very conscious decision that when you introduce Peter Parker and Tony Stark in Civil War, and he says, when you can do what I can do, and you don't, and the bad things happen anyway, you're still kind of responsible.
That's on you.
That's on you. So we have, with great power comes great responsibility, said by Peter 4 years ago, 5 movies ago, without it being said. So you think to yourself, they're not going to say it.
Yeah.
Because we've said it in every Spider-Man movie to this point in time, right? Number 2, when Uncle Ben dies in the previous 2 iterations of Spider-Man, it happens in the first act of the movie of each movie. You spend no time with either Uncle Ben really on screen. You don't develop a relationship between the character or the audience and the character. So when he dies in the first movie, you go with it because you know it has to happen because that is the impetus that pushes Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
it's Uncle Ben. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the second movie, people said, "Well, why do we have to have the origin story again?" Because we didn't care about it. You didn't care about it because A, you saw it already, and B, you spend no time with Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben, so it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But how fucking genius is it that you give us 5 to 6 movies of Peter Parker, of Aunt May, have that relationship build where you see how much he loves her and see how much she loves him and how she's shaping him to be a good man, teaching him how to dance, being the one there to try to show him how to tie a tie, right, in Homecoming. Making sure he takes his Spidey suit with him, talking about the Peter Tingle in the second movie. The payoff of them making that switch to happening in this movie is why the emotion was so good. How fucking smart were they to be able to do that? It was absolute, like, I'm so upset that I didn't see it coming as somebody who was told stories before, didn't even think about it. It was so perfect. So perfect.
There's that moment, and I take it because the film is so good and everyone who's in it acted so fucking well, that whenever Dafoe sends the glider in at her and then there's the explosion and all that other stuff and she gets up, you buy it for a second. She's like, I just got the wind knocked out of me. She's okay.
Yes.
And then when she says the fucking line, like, you felt
this is it. Yeah,
the
you know
air
what's coming.
came out of everybody in the theater. Yeah. And my wife, who has never seen any of the other Spider-Man movies until except for the ones in the MCU, but knows that line, right? When she said that, my wife started crying and went, "Oh no!" Like, I'm like it's like, "Oh, you know, you've never seen any of those." It's like, "Oh God!" But I mean, to just kind of say, like, to make the principal, there's 2 principal villains in this whole movie. There's all the other villains, right? And everyone does, there is the whole thing. But to make the one physical principal villain still Dafoe, like, he's the motivator. It's like in that, like, that Willem Dafoe and Peter Parker fighting each other started this whole goddamn thing, and here we are, fucking all these movies later, 12 movies with Spider-Man in it, and he's the Goblin is still the Goblin. But to do it in such a clever way, in such a genius way, was ballsy, but and amazing. But the thing that I think is the unsung villain of this movie and a lot of the Spider-Man story arcs is that the greatest threat to Peter Parker is Spider-Man and being Spider-Man and doing what Spider-Man does and himself and trying the whole concept of why he's the most relatable of all of these superheroes that we've had for all these years. Superman is fucking overpowered, broken guy, and Batman's a rich kid that decides just to go away and learn kung fu and get into some bondage play for his own fetish, and they all make the money they make, and they'll always still make the money they make. But the whole idea is that Peter Parker never really, he always wants to be Peter Parker, right? He has to be Spider-Man, but he always tries in every iteration, from the Ultimate Comics to the Amazing Comics to every iteration of the movie. All he does, spends all the time, is just trying to be Peter Parker, but he can't. And it always leads to that realization that that the death of the character never really comes in the death of the form of Spider-Man dying. It comes in the form of the death of Peter Parker, right? And that all he has to a certain point is being Spider-Man. Right. And I think that is the true villain. And it was literally physically summed up in us in this movie, that it was his decision to try to be Peter Parker while being Spider-Man that ultimately led to all of this. And Willem Dafoe absolutely, like, almost verbatim says that. It's like, I'll make you into who you're supposed to be. And it does. It does. Mm-hmm. But speaking of being made into who you're supposed to be, so, rumor has it there's more than one fucking Spider-Man in this movie.
Yeah. Rumor may or may not be true.
Allegedly.
And how amazing was it that instead of some sort of big swooping reveal where Tom Holland's getting pummeled by 6 villains and all of a sudden 2 other Spider-Man come swinging out of nowhere, they're just in Ned's grandma's kitchen.
I just walk in.
And oh, by the way, Ned has the ability to do magic too.
Yeah.
Which
It's been in his family for years, according to his nana.
Stole the sling ring.
and he got the sling ring, and then all of a sudden, just casually walks Andrew Garfield, who we can all agree is the least, and before this movie came out, before the internet fucking exploded about it, the least popular of the three actors to play Spider-Man, and the least easily, is the first one out. Right? They saved Toby for a little bit to be a little bit more subtle, and immediately endears himself to the entire fucking world about 3 seconds after being in this movie.
Well, so, Andrew Garfield, to his credit, right? He's going to be up. He's probably going to be up for an Oscar this year. And I believe he's already up for Gold Globe.
Keep that name out your mouth.
I will always sit that on your chest.
He will take that shot
every chance I get.
Whoa, hey.
He has been nominated for an Academy Award before for Hacksaw Ridge, I believe he was nominated for that. He is a fine actor. He has gotten a shit end of the stick in this whole Spider-Man thing because those movies, being what they were not his fault. It was definitely the other people around. I thought Andrew Garfield, of the three Spider-Mans, was the one actor who got Spider-Man's personality. We always talk about Batman. Yeah. Everybody says your favorite Batman is Michael Keaton. Your favorite Bruce Wayne is Christian Bale, and then who is really the person who best encapsulates the entire spectrum of that character? Maybe you go ahead and say from Batman the Animated Series, but I've always felt that Andrew Garfield, much more than Tobey Maguire, got the personality of Spider-Man about how you change when you put the mask on. Because when he puts the mask on, he's no longer the scrawny, nerdy kid from Midtown High. He's a fucking badass who can stop a car with his bare hands going 50 miles an hour and can swing and basically fly through the buildings in New York City, right? I thought Andrew Garfield and his portrayal of Spider-Man got the personality. And I love that they gave it to him because he denied. I watched a video on YouTube the other day.
He denied hard for a while.
5 minutes of YouTube clips of him just denying being in Spider-Man, despite whatever anybody tried to get him to say. Because everybody knew he was in it, and he knew he was in it, and they knew he was in it. And, just to be able to finally release that has to feel good for him. That I can now breathe.
Kayfabe, right?
Yeah, and for him, if you go back and read articles and stories about, his time as making The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, he loved Spider-Man. That was all he ever wanted to do was play Spider-Man. And he felt like he didn't get the opportunity to do that character justice. And when they pulled Amazing Spider-Man 3 off the table and went with, rebooting Spider-Man again for the MCU, he was devastated. And I think this was the ideal and perfect way to give him his redemption. And if you look at what's happening now on the internet, there's a lot of fan push for Amazing Spider-Man 3 and pulling Venom back into it and letting Andrew Garfield run that side of Sony's Spider-Verse and let Tom Holland stay in the MCU.
I didn't even read about
totally
that.
Okay with that.
I'm perfectly fine with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, putting him and Tom Hardy in that world together, which would make a lot of sense considering that. Flat out, I agree with you. To kind of elaborate in there, I've always felt that you really no one has yet to be the complete package as I imagine the Spider-Man character to be. I think Garfield was the best quippy Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Holland has been the best Peter Parker as far as the super antsy, super nerdy, the most awkward. If awkward was a viable palpable substance. That's what Tom Holland brought to the MCU. And Tobey Maguire will be famous for having the ugliest Spider-Man cry of all time. Just like snot coming down. I mean, that's you gotta respect your legacy. But yeah, but Garfield immediately, it was the right decision. And the way it played, the whole thing for all of them, but more him than anybody else. It felt like closure for his Spider-Man in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like full-on closure for his Spider-Man and him as a person in a lot of those ways, like his run as Spider-Man. And immediately, as soon as he walked through that portal and he started having that conversation where he went up and got the cobweb and all that other shit, like you're like, oh, he's completely immediately endeared himself into these characters, into this universe, to the point which was interesting that you didn't think about it, that in a movie where you didn't know for sure, but you knew that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to be in it, and we knew for sure that all of these other villains, that by the end of the movie, the one character from the multiverse that you were most sad to see go was Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Nobody would have fucking predicted that. Not in a million years, and that he immediately would get himself in there. So
yeah, and the way that he played it, I mean, you could physically see the way that being Spider-Man has taken its toll on him, and how emotional he is and was compared to the other Spider-Men. It was just very endearing and very you connected with him on an emotional level right away. And I thought it was smart when they're like, show me Peter Parker and he's Spider-Man, but he's in the alley. And as soon as you saw him in the alley, you're like, that's not Tom Holland's suit.
No,
that's not.
Tom. And that's not Tom Holland's buff ass frame. Man,
he's a foot taller, at least. But for him to come out, and I was disappointed when in the screening that we were in together, that there wasn't as loud of a crowd reaction to those big moments. Mm-hmm. When I went on opening night, it was the theater was loud and cheering, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I like that when he took his mask off, because you knew, if you've paid any attention to the Spider-Man movies, you knew that was Andrew Garfield's spider suit as soon as you saw it. It's very the eyes in particular, the mask is very distinct. He had stubble. He had a 5 o'clock shadow. You could see that there was a passage of time for us since we last saw Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, because he was only 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago was the last time he played it.
2014.
Yeah, so he's not that much older now as a human, right? But it shows a little passage that his Peter's been through some shit. Giggity, that's what she said. Thank you. But and his character of the three certainly has, not just losing his Uncle Ben, but also losing his MJ, losing Gwen Stacy, and knowing that he couldn't, that he had the ability to do it and he failed. When she snapped. That to me was always the hardest part of those movies was that when she snapped, right? And I love that in the 3 Spider-Man movies, we get these repeating beats. You get the Uncle Ben beat, which paid off here, but you also get the MJ beats. In the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, Goblin's got the infamous Roosevelt Island tram scene where he drops MJ and drops the tram. Peter, you have to choose, right? He succeeds. He saves both. And the second, Gwen drops. He catches her, but she snaps, breaks her neck, she dies. And then we get the third, which we see it in the trailer for the movie. But you get that third moment where now our MJ, our Michelle, is going to fall. And how's that going to play out? That, there's always that thing that, no matter how many times you try to go change fate, the same beats still always kind of happen. I love that pays off here too. But you see the scarring that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man has had from that. And, he even says that to Peter when they're talking about how he went to a really bad place and he wasn't throwing his punches anymore. the rage really consumed him after Gwen died. So
yeah, and it becomes a whole subplot is in both meta and in literal cinematic terms, the redemption of Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker, being the one to catch her and being the one and having no real lines of dialogue in that scene where he catches Michelle. And just to know, and it just made you feel good, because even if how you felt about the movie is oh, we never got a positive resolution for that guy, because that's Amazing Spider-Man 2 ends with the Rhino thing, right? And to kind of take you into a new space, but you don't get the positive ending for Peter in that movie. So his Andrew Garfield's off and the nether. But it was interesting, as you mentioned, the passage of time in this movie, right? And the realization, obviously de-aging everybody a little bit in the villains side of things, because they should look as if the moment that they died, right? And what they did with Defoe, I think, was super cool. Make it good, but not make it subtle. But as far as reveals and the passage of time, that we got Andrew Garfield. He comes up. He's obviously at that moment he's Spider-Man, right? And he was doing his Spider-Man thing when he got pulled into this universe, walking around looking, and he's now in his mid-20s and he's off being vengeful Spider-Man in the universe. And then Toby shows up, and he looks like he had been yanked out of shopping at IKEA for a new love seat. You know what I mean? He's got the jacket on. Yeah,
he had a Flurgan in his cart.
All he was thinking about was pizza time when he got pulled into another universe. But how interesting because despite his best efforts, being Spider-Man defined Tobey Maguire's career. Garfield got away with it. He got away from it to a certain extent, even though he wanted to be defined by being Spider-Man. But Hacksaw Ridge and the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus and the new movie that he's out now that is doing really well, besides this one. But Tobey never got away from being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? And but we didn't get as much. He wasn't as much of a fill me in on what you've been doing for the past 20 years, Tobey. He was I'm okay. It's hard and we're doing it, but it was more of a throwback. Hey, do you remember when? Whereas Garfield's was this is all about completing Andrew Garfield's run as Spider-Man to a certain extent. But Doc, how did you feel when Tobey Maguire comes out with his dinner jacket? Just looking like he was rather had been anywhere else when he got sucked into this universe.
That's a good question. And I'm going to disagree partially with the general consensus. I think that Tobey Maguire is, in my mind, the best Peter Parker, whereas Andrew Garfield's easily the best Spider-Man in terms of personality and wit and charm. But I think Tom Holland does a really good job of kind of getting them both down pretty well, not perfect.
The balance,
but Tobey Maguire, as much as I do, and I'm such a big fan of how Tom Holland plays these characters, because they're two different characters, really. Tobey Maguire is Spider-Man to me. He always will be Spider-Man, which, like you said. And I think that the Spider-Man we got to see, which was really cool, as much as I enjoyed everything with Andrew Garfield and his arc, and don't get me wrong, when he saved MJ, again, emotional moment. I felt that shit. If you know, you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Part of that was because he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Are you okay?" Like she could tell, like he's been through something like this before.
Yeah,
he's been through some shit.
But I really enjoyed. I talked to a couple people about their thoughts on Tobey Maguire, and they felt like, he didn't really do much, and he didn't have to. He's been there and done that now a lot. And we are looking at a man at peace in who he is and what he has to do and the sacrifices that must be made and the danger that comes with being who you are. And I thought that, every scene he was in, when he's interacting with Tom specifically, he's just exuding this big brother vibe. It's cool, man. It's fine. We're good. When he goes and, jump ahead, but when he goes to try to stop Peter from killing the Goblin, right? He's just giving them this look like, I've been here. There's no need for this. Like, I fucking felt that moment, right? He didn't have to say anything really. And it's really cool that you look at these 3 different human beings playing the exact same character, and they're just different parts of this journey. They're just different emotional states that they've all been on. You know, I think that maybe the Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man hasn't been at the position Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was in. You're wrong, because he has, right? He's been in that path. And then Tom Holland's character was starting to creep into Andrew Garfield's path, right? It's just really cool just looking at, this is the timeline. This is where you go. This is where you're going to go. You know, but eventually you can make it to a point of peace. And I thought that was beautiful, actually, for a comic book movie. I thought it was just really cool.
I think it was a nice little subtle touch. So, you know, you when you first see Garfield, he's dressed as Spider-Man, you know, and then he, you know, takes the hat off and he's Peter Parker. You see Tobey Maguire, he is Peter Parker. That thing that Peter Parker wants all his life, that he strives for, is to just kind of generally be Peter Parker as much, if not more, than he's Spider-Man. But then later when they make the joke, like, are you going to just go dressed as this? And then he pulls out his jacket and he shows the suit underneath, which is cool, but it gives you that subtle idea is that this has been a long time from the last time we saw Peter Parker to now, when he comes through that gate. And despite everything he's been through, he's still Spider-Man. Like, he was still Spider-Man in his world, in his universe, which meant that for all the bullshit that he inevitably probably went through and all that time, he never lost his way, which is like one of those types of things. So it lets you know, for both of the other Spider-Mans that he's dealing with, that it's possible, man, that you can have peace. You can find your way again back to it.
Yeah, and what I really liked was, you know, Herb, you mentioned sort of the big brother feeling to his Spider-Man, but he brings this sort of level of calmness to the role where it's like, yeah, some of it's going to be hard. I mean, you're fucking Spider-Man. Like, this is how it goes. But you can find peace in that, and almost like coaching them, like, all right, Andrew Garfield, like, I know you're going through some depression, but you're awesome. You're amazing. Like,
you're amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm going to help. I'm going to help build you up, because you're better than you think you are. You just have to get yourself mentally to that point. And I think that brought a level of ease to the other 2 Spider-Men, knowing that, yeah, shit seems crazy now, but it'll calm down if you let it, at least in your head. You know what I mean?
Tobey's Spider-Man always represented the original comics. You know, Sam Raimi always professed that his Spider-Man movies were meant out of the Silver Age, you know, Spider-Man storylines, right? And he wanted to use those characters. He wanted to use Sandman, Dr. Octopus, you know, he wanted to use Vulture. He did not want to use Venom. You know, Venom was a Sony push on Sam Raimi's 3rd movie, and you can see where it fell apart. You know, too many hands in the cookie jar, man. It just changes the narrative.
Too many Topher fucking Graces in the cookie jar.
Just one is too many.
Yeah.
To be the one, to him, I mean, they couldn't bring James Franco back for obvious reasons, but they could have brought Topher Grace back, and there's like, you know what? You know, we're just going to leave this one out. We're just going to let that one play off.
Nobody at Marvel returned his call.
No, they did not. But, you know, in the comics, when Spider-Man gets older, he gets married to MJ and they want to have a family and things like that. That's what Tobey got in his storyline. Yeah. You know, I like where he mentioned that, you know, him and MJ are together, but they're problems, right? Because, you know, really at that point, guys, Tobey Maguire's us at this stage, right? He's about our age. His Spider-Man is about our age. You know, his Peter Parker is about our age. And you guys know, being married and you know, with our wonderful, wonderful women in our lives,
women
who make us stronger and make us better than we could ever have thought we could be. But you know, when you are in those relationships, you have compromises. You have things you have to make decisions on. And there are parts of you that you bring with you into your relationship. Imagine bringing fucking Spider-Man into your relationship with somebody. And the challenges it has. I mean, sometimes, you know, we all get yelled at if we're maybe a little bit too loud in the evening playing video games, or, you know, if we're maybe staying out a little bit too late with the guys and not giving a phone call about when we're coming home or something like that.
We're recording a podcast at 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. and at as loud a volume as possible. Fuck you, right? With our infants and children in the rooms with us.
Yeah.
But, you know, now you got to sit there and be like, okay, I'm going to go out and fight Kraven the Hunter right now. So I might not be home for dinner. Oh, by the way, if I come home at a certain time, Kraven may just fucking follow us, but, you know, till death do us part. So throw those wrinkles of the relationship on top of everything that's going on with Peter. And, you know, you get what Tobey Maguire's going through at that point. It's like, yeah, MJ and I did figure out after the whole shit happened with Harry and his goblin and everything in the last movie, we did figure it out. We did make it work. But, you know, we're still working it out. It doesn't ever stop. But like you guys said, too, his Peter did find peace with being able to be Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But he also had that love to nurture him in with that as well. And I just thought that was so cool that, you know, and they set all that up with just a couple of lines of dialogue. You know?
They did. Speaking of lines of dialogue, I got to ask the question again. Like, we all hoped and prayed that we would get 3 Spider-Mans in this movie, and they would have interaction with each other more than just a passing thing. But could anybody have predicted how incredibly satisfying the 3 of them talking about casual bullshit for as long as they got the bullshit? It was amazing.
Awesome.
Like that. Yeah. Did anyone else go, okay, stop, everyone stop the movie, and can we just talk about this? Like, that's cue intermission. Let's come back and let's have a conversation about anything. Yeah. Anything, the fluid coming out of Tobey Maguire's arms and them being grossed out by it.
Does it come out anywhere else?
Yeah. But I think them geeking out to each other was so relatable to us geeking out about Spider-Man that it was just like, this is fucking awesome. I could watch 2 hours of this.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. And you're talking about classic lines of dialogue. I want to get the part when he's talking to when Electro is talking to Peter Parker.
Yep.
And the mask is off. Because remember, in the movie, Electro doesn't necessarily know that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are the same person. But and he goes, you know, coming from Queens, you know, and doing all the things that you do, I was kind of took you for a black man, right? And then you're thinking to yourself, Miles Morales.
Yep.
Because, you know, we all, as Spider-Man fans, can just and especially with Into the Spider-Verse, right? They have hinted at Miles throughout these movies, you know, with Donald Glover playing the character who's ultimately the Prowler, and we still haven't gotten that yet. I would love to get Donald Glover as the Prowler in another Spider-Man movie, right? Yeah. He's like, yeah, you know, I got a nephew who's out there, you know. They keep dropping Miles all over the place. I thought that was kind of a neat little tip of the hat, because you didn't know if you're going to get Spider-Gwen with this, you know, if maybe Emma Stone was going to show up as Gwen Stacy Spider-Man, right? Or
you never knew
if we were going to get anything else. I would have.
You could have even gotten. I mean, the movie would have had room for you to bring in a completely different Spider-Man that we had no idea about, and then I'm like, oh yeah, you'll work that out later.
Bring in just animated Spider-Man Noir with Nick Cage voicing it again. Tie it
so
into
cool.
the Spider-Verse. Why is your coat flapping in the wind? There's no wind. Wherever I go, the wind follows. Like, I thought it's great.
I thought it was that interaction was, again, and the things, this whole movie sums up in a phrase. It's like, they didn't have to do that for us, right? But they did it. But that interaction with Jamie Foxx and Andrew Garfield there on the scaffolding, where he talks about, I just was hoping that you were black, and Andrew Garfield apologizes. Like, yeah, right off the
really did.
But giving us the idea that, like, that's the acknowledgement that the one version of Spider-Man missing from this is Miles Morales. But give it time. We have a long time to go with this shit. There's so no way. So much time, because, you know, ultimately where the movie ends up is the way it's where how we all know Peter Parker, what we all think of. We don't think of him as an awkward high school student when we think about the thing. He's in a shitty apartment that he can barely afford because he can't hold a job because he's fucking Spider-Man, and that takes precedent over everything else, and he's alone.
Yep. And in his classic comic accurate suit.
Oh, so good.
Yes, that was so fucking good.
I
So
marked
good.
all over that we finally got the classic comic Spider-Man suit that he sewed himself. You know,
Yep.
He did. He did.
You know, it's Happy has that line in the second movie when they're in the plane, where then Tony's playing with the machine,
The fabricator.
and he goes, "You're all alone. You got no support. You don't have any tech. You just have yourself. What are you going to do?" And he made the decision at that point to be Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, he still had his tech. He still had his support. He still had everything. I was heartbroken at the end of this movie for Peter because he was completely and utterly alone. Everything that he earned in his life, whether it is the association with the Avengers, which everybody knows Spider-Man's still an Avenger, but they don't know it's Peter.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't lose that aspect of it. But his best friend, you know, his
that's
love,
tough.
his family. He can't even go back to high school because nobody remembers who Peter Parker. Because the spell wasn't forget everybody who knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. The spell was forget everybody to know that it's Peter Parker. It changed from the beginning of the movie to the end, where it completely left him as alone. He couldn't go back to high school. He couldn't even go back and try to pretend like he was a new kid in school and reintroduce his relationships. I loved at the end that he had the entire speech written about what he was going to say to MJ. And when he got to where he couldn't, because there's a part of him, I think, that still knew what every Peter Parker knows, is that if I'm going to bring you back into this, I'm bringing you back into it not just for the good that's selfishly mine, but for the bad that comes with it as well by putting you constantly in danger, which I've done for, 2.5 movies already, you know? And he just chose, because he didn't even go up and say hi to Ned. I think the relationship with Ned would have been easier for him to reform, right? But, he just kind of established it a little bit, and he's like, you know what? I'll come back to it. Because she was still wearing the necklace. She still had the broken Black Dahlia around her neck that I loved. That even though that she didn't remember who he was, she still remembered what that meant.
It was a really cool.
Please go.
Well, I was just gonna say, that whole scene was obviously very, and it was just to put yourself in the position of Peter Parker after everything that has happened. I mean, saving the world, saving the universe, and watching, saying goodbye to your best friend, saying goodbye to the woman that you love, and saying, all right, I'm gonna solve this, I'm gonna find you. And then the moment he sees them happy without him, that their life can just go on.
Talking about going to college, Yeah.
And it's like that is the first Peter Parker decision he made, right? As a man. Look at it and say, and he saw the bandage on her head, and he's just like, it could have been so much worse. Why do that again to her when it probably can end up worse? After meeting the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and learning about what he went through, there's that whole layer of that now. He knows, it was just, I'm not like, well, what would I do in that situation? I know, but I feel like if you love somebody that much, the way he loved Ned and loved MJ, it's the decision that you make.
Yep.
You love them so much, you want them to be happy, and if that means happy without him, then so be it, And that was just really a cool scene.
Oh, such a cool scene.
Yeah, and they really know how to tie things up. And interesting too, the very last sequence when he jumps out of the window of his new shitty apartment and he goes swinging out to be Spider-Man. I can't help but notice now, knowing what we know at the end of the year here, having all seen, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Hawkeye, the entirety of it, fuck you. Right, also, as well. What are you doing? Why are you doing anything that looks remotely Marvel related here if you haven't caught up? That's on you. It's not on me. I'm not your father. Okay, and if I am, I don't know about you, and I will legally disavow the knowledge of you. But he swings over the tree in Rockefeller Center, thus placing us, knowing what we know now, pre the season finale of Hawkeye, which was cool that they mentioned the new and improved Statue of Liberty in that, right? Which you wouldn't put together until you saw what they had done in Spider-Man, right? So it just kind of like weaves in like all of these moments into an exciting new era. Like we know where the grounded reality of the MCU is at. We've got Peter Parker is all alone, and he's in a fresh Peter Parker post. Now he's got an origin story, and he's got a whole new set of things. They could introduce their own Gwen Stacy, all the other new villains. We know that Vulture's in jail. The guy who eventually becomes the Scorpion's in jail with the Vulture. You got the Prowler out there. Tons of people.
Kraven the Hunter is one of the next ones that's going to be coming involved with Sony. They've got, and I wish they didn't do Aaron Taylor Johnson for this, but it's Aaron Taylor Johnson who will be playing Kraven the Hunter. I mean, if the only person on your list to play Kraven the Hunter isn't Jason Momoa, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, he's the only person I think who just put Khal Drogo in a fucking lion suit and let him chase Peter Parker around and just take my money, all of it, please. They've got the pieces in place where they can keep it going. It just depends on where they want to keep it going. One of the things that I noted about this is that in Tobey Maguire's movies, he loses Uncle Ben, but he also loses Harry. And he loses Harry because of, his own doing, right? His own decisions again. I made the wrong decision when I became Spider-Man. I lost my uncle. That was supposed to be my moral compass. I still ended up losing my way. I lost another friend too, right? And Andrew Garfield, same thing. I lose my way a little bit once I become Spider-Man. It causes Uncle Ben to kind of die. And then, I put Gwen in danger. She dies as well. The only death that our Peter Parker has in Tom Holland's versions is that it's Uncle Ben and, Aunt May. So he doesn't have that secondary loss at this stage. And because he doesn't have that family support and everything, he's obviously not going to be really working his way towards selling photographs for the Daily Bugle or anything like that. But I see him as, getting an internship at Stark Industries. I see him recreating himself. I see him becoming the heir apparent to what was his ultimately anyway. Getting those things back.
You mentioned Stark, though, but I mean, also, the MCU's Spider-Man, Peter Parker, lost Tony Stark, who in a lot of ways takes a big
part,
but not at his doing.
Well, no, yes. I'm going to hop in here and slap you with the big dick of a geek out here because he did. Because the whole reason Tony Stark ever invents time travel and saves the fucking universe is because he feels guilty over Peter Parker and bringing Peter Parker into this. And it is Peter Parker's demise that causes Tony Stark to do everything that involves him ultimately snapping the stones and killing himself, and which Peter Parker has to watch him die. The same way Peter Parker has to watch Uncle Ben die and all the other things. So in a lot of ways, putting a geek realization here, Tony Stark was the Uncle Ben of this MCU, mentoring, guiding him along. So I mean, he and we also got Harry killed. It's just at least if Harry never knew that Peter existed in the first place. So I think you have such a heavy hitter with J. Jonah Jameson now in the MCU, right? Hunting Spider-Man, that you got to lean into that relationship once again to show that as many things has changed for our version of Peter versus the previous versions of Peter. Certain things stay the same.
Certain things stay the same always. Yeah.
Always, right? So you got a lot and it's still because that still gives you the idea that here is in the world where we had Thanos and the rings and time travel and all of this other stuff, and now we have a time travel new subplot with Kang the Conqueror and Loki being a babyface and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and the Scarlet Witch doing all this stuff. Spider-Man now has been grounded in a lot of ways, and that can kind of bring the MCU up from this very relatable, not high concept. You've had to see all 29 other Marvel properties to know where Ant-Man 3 needs to be, which you're going to. You can't understand probably the entirety of Ant-Man 3 without seeing almost every single Marvel property beforehand. But being as that they reset Spider-Man, Nobody knows who he is. He's completely all alone. He's got no tech, and he's just in a shitty apartment. Someone can take their kid to Spider-Man 4 now without seeing a single movie and probably get just the general gist of it. And there's your two bookends of it.
Yep.
Grounded.
Yeah, he's completely grounded at this point. And relatable, because he doesn't have absurd superpowers. He doesn't have absurd amounts of money.
Nope.
He
doesn't have the iron spider suit's gone. He's not invincible anymore.
The government shut down the Stark Network, which is going to have ramifications throughout the MCU in general, right? What are the new Avengers that don't exist yet but will? What are they going to use, right? Pym Tech or Reed,
whatever you get in Wakanda, man.
Or
I mean, you already saw in Falcon Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier went to go get Falcon's new suit and his new wings out of Wakanda.
Maybe you can try to get some networking outsourced to Reed Richards going forward a little bit. Where we're at.
Planting those seeds.
On one other note for this movie, everybody, as we've kind of gotten to the the conclusion, I just want to say how fucking brilliantly acted I thought this movie was.
Oh yeah.
From really everybody. If you look at the accomplishments and the accolades of the cast that they've assembled around Tom Holland, who really, him, Zendaya, and the actor who played Ned. I'm sorry, I forget his name off the top of my head right now, but surrounding these three kids with Marissa Tomei, an Academy Award winner, Robert Downey Jr. I think he won for Chaplin.
He was nominated. He didn't win.
He's nominated and win. Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, Jamie Foxx, who's got an Oscar, Thomas Hayden Church, who's been nominated a few times. Even Ray Fiennes, right? I think that's how you say his name.
Even Ray Fiennes.
Ralphie Fiennes, right? You just put so many talented actors around these guys. And I think in this movie in particular, I think this was probably the best acted movie of any Marvel movie I've seen. Any of them. Like from X-Men up to this point, of any Marvel property. And Tom Holland fucking acted his ass off in this movie.
Yeah, I think, his performance in this movie on top of all the others, regardless of the box office draw that this movie is ultimately going to have, he's really cemented himself as a leading man and driving a 7 or 8 figure salary for any movie going forward easily.
Yeah. Oh, he's going to make so much money when they go to re-up his contract for this.
Oh, it's going to be absurd.
Three more Spider-Man movies, 3 Avengers movies, and then 3 Sony Pictures universe movies. We're talking, he's going to get a 9-figure deal, guys. You know that.
Oh yeah.
Plus box office receipts.
If his agent was smart, they would be doing it right now before Uncharted comes out and doesn't. And even if Uncharted
and bombs,
even if Uncharted does well, it can't stack up compared to this, right?
Well, even that. So they just dropped the new Uncharted trailer a couple days ago. Once they saw the numbers after the first week of Spider-Man, they're like, oh yeah, we got this Tom Holland movie coming. Let's get this out and start driving the hype train for that ASAP.
Let's get it going. Please forgive us that we didn't know that what we have on our hands, and we put Mark Wahlberg in this movie. But please actually still come and see this movie. We beg of you. We'll see how that goes. But
it's a little off topic. Have any of you guys seen Devil All the Time?
No,
not yet.
Yes.
Oh man, it's fucking good.
But Tom Holland is really good.
Yeah, it's fucking good. Please,
he acts the shit out of that movie too.
Yes,
it's really good.
Everybody does such a good job in that film, but it's excellent.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird when we've had Tom Holland for what 6 movies now, right? 2 Avengers, 1 Captain America, and then 3 Spider-Man movies, right? And really in like 5 years, pretty much, where we've gotten all that. I hope nothing but good things for Tom Holland. He seems like he's a good kid with his head on his shoulders. He's really at the beginning of what could be an extremely promising career. You hope that just these that he could stay grounded in the world that he's in and still be able to be successful. you know?
And that's why I think it was smart to end the movie the way they did, because you don't need a teenage Spider-Man anymore. He's an adult Spider-Man now. And you can, whether they recast it or not, they can keep Tom Holland going as Spider-Man for as long as they want to, because he's no longer a kid in high school or college. He's an adult living in NYC.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and when the minute you realize because the bubble will eventually burst on all things Marvel and all things superhero, and if they get tempted to refresh it, make it younger, well, then that's what. Look at that, we got a guest coming in, puppy guest.
Didn't expect to just busted in.
He just busted in.
But that's when you bring Miles.
It's what she does, man. It's what she does. This is her office, and we're just living in it.
It's her space.
Yep.
But yeah, when you need to freshen up Spider-Man and bring it back to a younger audience, that's when you bring Miles in and you have aged Tom Holland teach a young Miles the ways of the thing, and the fucking world keeps moving on, right? But speaking of moving on, that's it for 2021, guys. What a year. This is our inaugural year. We did it. We made it.
Gentlemen, one of my beginning of every year, I try to set some goals for myself. Some of them might be physical goals, some of them might be financial goals, some of them might be have
sex with a lot of dudes. Get paid to have sex with a lot of dudes.
Find somebody with 4 extra arms like Dr. Octopus and just have them have their way with you. Yes.
Have sex with one dude who feels like a bunch of dudes.
Just a bunch of dudes. Just all sorts of extra arms, all sorts of places, all sorts of crevices. One of the things that I had on my list the last couple of years was to finally record a podcast, and, gentlemen, as we take, 2021 into 2022 here, I just want to thank you guys for doing this, for creating this, for having this outlet, and for, having me be a part of it. This has been probably, outside of some wonderful relationship things with my beloved Stephanie and my family, one of my highlights of this year. So thank you for letting me be a part of it and going on this journey with you guys.
Yeah, I echo that. Aside from the things that he does with Stephanie, I don't want to get in trouble. But
you were there.
But thank you guys for letting us be a part of it. We came in on a few guest spots early on, and become regulars, and we're just happy to be a part of it. So thank you guys for getting the wheels in motion for Nothing Good. It's been a blast so far.
Yeah.
Wow. You're fucking welcome. Absolutely. It's a fucking goddamn pleasure.
And that's the last time I'm going to tickle your asshole with any part of me as we move forward on this. Because after this, it'll just be fuck you. It's so well.
The whole experience with the podcast, with Noah coming to me back in May or June. It was pretty fucking early. It was early, and like, man, I think we should try this out. And I'm like, okay, well, fuck. I mean, we have reached a point in our adult lives where there's some stability. There's extra money hanging around, typically, and space to do things, and room to breathe, able to do the things you want to do after working 9 to 5 or whatever you work. And it has been such an interesting experience for me. It's been a great experience, and it's a constant challenge to be yourself, be entertained, have a good time. But what makes it easy for me is that some of my closest friends are weekly on this call with me, which is it's excellent. I'm just really pleased that this is actually happening. And whether, Noah and I used to joke and say, well, if we get 10 people to listen every week, that's like that'd be amazing. That'd be like the best thing ever, actually. And we get typically 20 plus downloads a week, which is considerably more than I could have ever guessed or ever expected. So it's just, we thank everybody on, who listens to us, who thinks we're even remotely entertaining or interesting to listen to. We greatly appreciate that. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with your sense of humor, but I'm glad you're here.
Right?
Yeah.
No,
and people around the world have discovered this,
right?
You know,
that's the weird.
That's pretty crazy. You know, we always joked around with some of our Dangerwood work and some of the views we've gotten on YouTube and other streaming services. You know, who's watching this, and we can kind of see a little bit that, you know, who's listening to this, and you get Ireland, and you get Germany, and you get Canada, and you get Peru.
Sweet Peru.
Sweet
sexy
Peru. You know, Australia, New South Wales, you guys said?
Yeah.
In New Zealand and everything. I mean, yeah, like it's our midnight listener, you know.
Which I wanted to say is, first of all, through all things, thank you to the midnight listener for being who you are and what you do, not only as a part of the show, as an unspoken hero, but as a constant presence. But I also want to say the midnight listener seems like a really shitty superhero name. Like when the MCU gets down to the bottom, where like we're gonna have to try to get ourselves super excited for the Lady Archer and Moon Knight crossover series that we're gonna have to deal with when the bubble bursts. Feels like, oh, you know who we need to call? The Midnight Listener. It's like he doesn't actually do anything, but he hears.
That's pretty much Night Nurse, the way that you're kind of like describing it a little bit there. I can't fucking wait for Moon Knight.
Oh,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna nail that one. But yeah, the fucking our night listener. Yeah.
I have a question.
Get it?
I have two big questions, but I have one real specific question. Of all the MCU properties that are going to come, that we know we're on their way, we don't have a date for, blah blah blah. What's the one that each one of you guys you're most excited for? The one you are like absolutely cannot wait to see how Marvel and Disney does it up. Mac.
I'm going to say the one that they're not telling us about. I've got a theory that I've been kind of carrying along for a while, that, you know, you're establishing a bunch of different presences here, a bunch of different characters. You know, you've got a whole new Avengers world that we're rolling into with a whole new set of Avengers. And at what point are you going to go ahead and have who's going to be your next foe for the Avengers, right? Who's going to be the next main bad guy or bad girl or villain that you're going to have them go up against? And I believe with this whole multiverse, gentlemen, that we're not going to get a bad guy or a bad girl. We're going to get a fucking team. We're going to get a team of fucking individuals from upstate New York who end up, whether it's from radiation from the snap, whether it's going to be some weird crossover rebirth from the Eternals or something else, however they decide to introduce them. But Avengers versus X-Men is going to be the fucking property that you use as an Avengers movie after Endgame. That's why they haven't said it. That's why they haven't described it. That's why there's no release date, because they haven't gotten the character yet. And to see fucking Cyclops go up against Captain Marvel, or to see, you know, whoever a Black Panther is going to be going up against Wolverine, fucking take every money that I have for this property when that eventually comes up. But since that's not announced, I have big hopes that Marvel will get the Fantastic Four right. That's my whole thing. You know?
I hope.
The greatest Fantastic Four movie, I think we've joked about this, guys, is The Incredibles. That's the best Fantastic Four movie.
It is the best Fantastic Four movie.
It really
right.
is. True. So, you know, the director of our Spider-Man franchise, John Watts, he is scheduled to helm Fantastic Four for Marvel Studios. I think Fantastic Four is in good hands with him at the helm for this.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm most looking forward to right now.
All right. Jeff?
Yeah, so
what are you feeling?
I was super hyped about Spider-Man, and now that that's in the rear view, the next big one for me is going to be Thor: Love and Thunder. I love the way that Taika Waititi has changed Thor since Thor Ragnarok, which was one of my favorite movies from not only the Thor series, but the last phase of Marvel movies.
And incredible
to wrap in Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy together in Love and Thunder. I'm excited to see what they do with that.
And Christian Bale.
Yeah.
And Christian Bale.
Right, as our villain.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and Jane Foster as female Thor.
That's so cool. No, yeah. In the same vein, I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I would love I'm so excited because I think Ragnarok is one of the top 3 quality movies of the entire MCU as far as the humor and the style and how much fun it is to watch.
Yep.
And I, too, am excited for the Fantastic Four, if only because I think when you talk about characters that have the potential to be a Thanos-level villain, Doom, dude. Doom is incredible,
Doom.
Right? And just to see how they do Doom will just... I mean, my dick can only get so hard. I'm going to have to consult a doctor after so many times. But I'm going to take a different aspect that of all the things that we know are in the pipeline somewhere, but haven't been officially given a date or a time yet, the thing I'm most excited for, I'm going to say, is Loki season 2. And I will say that because I think one of the coolest aspects that you never really appreciate until he's on your screen is the fact that one of the only constants in this whole entire MCU thing, one of the original characters left, is Loki. And they have been slowly turning him babyface since the fucking beginning. And we finally got the payoff with Loki season 1 for Undisputed with a sliver in Avengers, right? And Ragnarok a little bit, but we got the payoff to full-on babyface Loki running out, does the right thing. He gets Loki'd for it. And now he's off and he is lost somewhere in the annals of time or annals of time, depending on what direction you want to approach time and if it's consensual. And his role, and I see eventually, first of all, an X-Men versus Avengers would be incredible. But who do you see as the forefront of the characters so that eventual, at the end of the day, all of Marvel comes back to stop some sort of threat like Kang or Doom or Galactus, right? Who's on that? And you got, as we covered today, Peter Parker's got to be there, right? Spider-Man, he's too damn financially viable not to be there. But Loki, as like turning somehow into a huge chunk of the heart and soul of the MCU. So Loki season 2, what they do with it, because they can do anything. That's the idea. We know the kind of restraints placed on a Spider-Man or what we want to see placed on an X-Men. You can only do so much with where they take, and they could go basically anywhere they want, but Black Panther. But Loki out there is a character who's technically dead in a lot of universes. Out there in the time, there is no telling what they can't do. So that would be my answer. Doc, what about you?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm really excited about what they're going to do with the Blade property. Because realistically, even though Blade Trinity was not the best Blade movie, it wasn't terrible. I mean, it really wasn't terrible.
They needed to pay more money to their Dracula in order for that movie to have worked.
But I mean, ultimately, like, Disney, they're really just Marvel. They just know these characters. It's their characters. They know them. They have thousands upon thousands of stories and characters and moments and panels and splash pages to just look at something and go, that'd be a cool scene. What can we spin off from this idea, from this one little, image? But as much as I'm excited about Blade, and I am excited about Blade, it really does boil down to the mutants. I've been telling anybody who will listen, they will run out of money. But like people will just spend all the money in the world, and then Marvel will all the money in the world. When the X-Men come, and if it's done correctly, they're gonna make so much money it's gonna be stupid. And I'm really, more than anything else, we've all had this conversation. Like, how do you bring them in? It doesn't even matter anymore because it's coming. It's going to happen. And I just, like, the idea that the thing that I think was, I can't remember who it was, mentioned earlier about the Spider-Man, about how at the beginning, how claustrophobic it was, how the citizens of New York turned on Peter so quickly, turned on Spider-Man so quickly, right? And you want to see that times 1,000 and how humans will treat mutants, how the world's going to change. Right? But people who are just born different, people who they can't help who they are, they just are who they are. And in the world, the climate we live in today, I think that there's a space for the X-Men movies to exist in the MCU. There's so many awesome villains to choose from. They don't even have to. They just put a whole bunch in the back pocket. They don't even have to have any X-Men level villains and just fuck around with Galactus instead. That's the best part, right? But yeah, it's the X-Men, and how will they bring them in? That's what I'm most looking forward to. And then play.
It's so exciting when you think about like where this has come from and where it's going and what we're going to get. You mentioned Blade, Jones. I want Wesley Snipes in Multiverse of Madness, even if just for a 2-minute cameo where that version of Blade shows up.
Oh my God. Could you imagine a scene where they're sitting there in the nexus of all the universes and then Wesley Snipes runs by and then the IRS is chasing right after him?
Oh my God.
Listen. I will say, if there's any single character, any single actor who deserves to show up in Multiverse of Madness, it's Wesley Snipes, because he does not get enough credit for what he did with that character that started this entire fucking thing. I know there's a groundswell on the internet of people reminding everybody that none of this happens if Blade doesn't work. If they didn't take the vampire movie and make a mature fucking... those first 2 Blade movies are so fucking good.
Oh, Blade 2 is so good.
But yeah, I mean, you've fucking Guillermo del Toro, decides we're going to go ahead and make a Marvel movie, right? So, I would love to see that pay off. But the character who's in limbo that I'm so excited for, that I want to see where this is going, that we all forget about, is fucking Wade Wilson.
Yeah, I was going to say Deadpool.
That is coming.
He's officially part of the MCU. It's just a matter of where he's going to show up.
When is he going to pop up here? There was a part of me that really hoped that the end credit scene of Avengers Endgame was going to be him showing up in the taxi while they're already cleaning up Avengers Campus because he was just fucking late. I thought that would have been so funny and so on character, and he just yells at his cab driver buddy, and they get back in the car and drive away. But that would have been, I think, so on point. But I know the script, it's either written or it's being written on. They got 2 of the writers from Bob's Burgers to at least pen an initial script for it. And I'm excited to see where that goes. Taika Waititi too. I just watched Free Guy last night, and that was really entertaining and enjoyable. And I just want to see where all this shit goes. But in a world of, we started with Iron Man and got through Avengers and got through Thanos and everything else, you still have Magneto. You still have Doctor Doom. You still have Galactus. You still have this fucking rich library of main characters, of aces that you get to play.
Yeah.
And they haven't even touched upon it yet.
I think there's just so much we can speculate about the future of the MCU. You could even just so minutely break it down to, how do you do Magneto in 2022, 2023, 2030, when a huge portion of his character is based off the Holocaust, and every year we get further away from it, and then you got to like where with the concept of time travel, but I mean, it's also super incredible. Do you like the idea that that Magneto would have done far more damage to the Avengers and Stark Tech than Thanos could have ever have hoped that? Magneto could have farted. He could have been trying to hold one in, and one squeezes out, and that pressure that he's in would have just destroyed the entire Avengers compound. So really interested to see where that goes for it. And that's not even talking about the future of the characters like the Falcon, Winter Soldier, where that whole thing happens, Wanda, or the idea that money fucking talks so loud. So there's no thing that rules out characters that are dead or are super old and floating coming back, because hey, you could be a director all you want, but add a bunch of zeros after a 1 and anyone will put a suit or hold a shield again. Put it that way.
Time and space doesn't really matter anymore.
No, it doesn't. And also to put in there, I would love just an awkward special where Steve Rogers goes back in time to the 40s and has to awkwardly sit there while racism keeps happening. And we got to go through the entire, like the Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the moon landing, the Cold War, 9/11. You got Captain America willingly went back in time to let 9/11 happen. Let's just let everyone set that one up for a little while.
They hinted in Black Widow that he fought David Harbour's was it Red Red Commander?
Something like that.
I'm going to blow my mind here. I'm not thinking of it. But yeah.
No, that's what I'm driving. Because he keeps saying through the entire movie that, he fought Captain America, and everybody is just telling him, oh, no, you're completely full of shit, and Captain America was frozen in ice that time and everything. And
Red Guardian,
yeah. And no, he probably fought an older Steve Rogers during the Cold War for some reason, and nobody really talks about that. But, throw a few more zeros out there. We'll get Chris Evans doing that one. Right?
Randomly showing up and Don't Look Up or anything like that. He'll run out of shit to do eventually. He'll stop being incredibly handsome and then just downgrade to super handsome, and then he'll start doing that. But we can try as much as we want. I don't think we're ever going to get more handsome, but we are going to keep doing is coming out with new shit, because 2022 is a new year, and boy, we have a lot of shit on the radar. I don't want to go into all of it, but I will talk about next week, because guys, we've been talking about movies for fucking forever.
For the
hot minute. And we're going to take a break on movies, because we're going to talk about what is statistically the least popular thing that we do on the show. Fucking pro wrestling.
What a subject I enjoy.
Way to kick off the new year, right?
Yeah, we're going to start it with something you don't want to listen to. It's the 2010 Monday Night Wars. TNA Impact attempts to go head-to-head with Monday Night Raw and jumpstart a feud that doesn't exist. It's very similar to people tweeting people to try to pick fights, and it never comes to be. But what it does give us is two key moments to talk about next week. On one hand, well, there's all things TNA, probably the only time we'll ever talk about it on our show. And it gives us a chance to gripe about what a douchebag Hulk Hogan is and all the associated acts with it. And on the flip side, it's kind of the end cap to all of the Montreal talk that we've mentioned throughout the history of the show. It's the night that Bret Hart pretends to forgive Shawn Michaels. January 4th.
He definitely pretended.
Night.
And
Jones, you and I were together on that one.
All of us were. The three of us were. We watched all episodes
we did.
as it happened.
Yeah.
We made the wise decision to watch Raw as it happened, and then watch TNA.
Go watch TNA later.
After fast forwarding to that DVR.
Just
but
DVR, man. Just the beauty of DVR.
At the time. But, gentlemen, thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for all of us doing it here. I always wanted to add my 2 cents on here to this, that originally this whole thing started as a way for us to babble and add our voices to the endless thing of the Endless podcast, but it quickly became apparent that this is an undeniable way for all of us to see each other on a regular basis. And that's what it's worth. And for the listeners that allow us to have the data to keep supporting to my wife why I need to keep doing this. And watch. Does it really need to be every week? Can't you have like a season? It should be a monthly podcast. I'm like, do you understand how podcasts work? Do you understand how concepts work? No. Look at this. There are 20 people every week that need me and need us.
That's right. So
yes, I'm going to go do that thing. And I appreciate everyone who's helped make 2021 the inaugural year. 20-some, high 20s amount of episodes in here today. So thank you to everybody, to our midnight listeners, to the sweet, succulent body of the nation of Peru, and to all of our international listeners. We just wanted to say Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and thank you. Gentlemen, anything else to add?
No, thank you, everyone. And God bless us all. America.
Yeah,
with
thank
great
you. Great
power comes great responsibility. Don't forget.
There you
nice.
go.
Yeah, and just thank you everybody for listening. We look forward to continuing this journey with you all in the upcoming year. So, best of health to everybody. Stay safe out there, and keep tuning into a little bit of
nothing good. Well, that was a good show, guys. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. Fucking, can you believe people fucking listen to this?
Who would have thought?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that there's actually an audience for this. So
I just can't keep doing this accent though. I'm gonna have to drop it eventually.
How you hold it for that many hours is impressive in itself.
I don't know, and I don't know how much longer I can do it. But damn it, I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
I'm going to try. They can't ever know the truth. They can't ever know the truth.
No one will ever know.
No
one
little
secret.
This will never make air. But speaking of post-credit sequences and movies and stuff, we got Venom. What was that?
I don't quite know what they were trying to do with that post-credit sequence in any way, shape, or form.
Did you guys see the second Venom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet. I know what happened. I know the post-credit sequence and what they did.
Yeah, he jumps to the MCU. Spoiler alert. He jumps to the MCU in the end credit scene.
Yeah.
Through the hive mind of the symbiote.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's tapping into the hive mind, who knows that Topher Grace exists and therefore Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Right.
And then he gets pulled out, but leaves symbiote
part
there.
Of Venom.
Venom. So that allows us Venom to be in the MCU.
Yeah. So are we going to get the black suited Spider-Man at some point here?
I don't think that's what that's for. And I think that it can give you the idea that that's basically a very heavy-handed visual representation of Venom's in the symbiote suit's going to be involved in Spider-Man going forward. But there's so many better ways you could do the black suit than having it be the exact same shit that we've been dealing with. That I think having Tom Hardy and Andrew Garfield, maybe that universe go in that direction, and then come up with a completely different concept of Venom. I think the weakest person in No Way Home was Flash. He's always the weakest actor in all these movies.
Yeah.
And I like that idea of having him be the one to get dealt with the Venom suit first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would be interesting, right? Who knows Peter Parker and all that other stuff. But I mean, you have a chance right now in this moment in time to just give us an Eddie Brock that we all want. Not a wormy that
we've never got.
Eddie Brock. And Tom Hardy's awesome, but he plays it in such a unique. Of course, Tom Hardy going to just decide that Tom Hardy all over a movie way. But I mean, fucking pick somebody and give us a slow burn with Eddie Brock, and if that's what you want. If you told me that Venom never appears in the Tom Holland Marvel universe directly, I wouldn't be that morbidly upset about it, right? I would if they do it, cool. But that's weird. That's like weird high concept Spider-Man stuff, and you just grounded Spider-Man.
Yeah,
so give us time. Let it work its way around the world a little bit. But
yeah, so at the end of that scene, did he just go back to his reality?
I assume so.
It just seems so random.
Wasted.
It was super random.
It was wasted. I mean,
no. I mean, he was wasted, is what I said. Like, super drunk. I think it was done to be. I think it was done to fuck with us a little bit. Where here's all of these rumors about all of the people being in this movie, and which never happens. It all absolutely panned out to be true. Then we're thinking, and add on to that, now Tom Hardy's in the MCU. Oh no, he's not. Right? Like, fuck you. It was very similar.
Just undid it.
Very similar to me to that whole patience. Sometimes you wait around and ultimately reveals not to be worth it. Like that post-credit sequence. That's what that was that version of that. Of course, we also have the ability in sometimes, but at least we don't get those types of sequences where you're like really invested in like some sort of secret post-credit kind of a sequence, and all of a sudden the segment just cuts